Bye forever. A borderline personality, mental disorder specialist, infinitist, spitting this into the abyss of my infinite syllable pit, syllable mix. People with BPD are like people with a third degree burns, over 90% of their bodies, lacking emotional skin. They feel agony at the slightest touch or movement. I couldn't trust my own emotions, which emotional reactions were justified, if any, and which ones were tainted by the mental illness of BPD, borderline personality disorder. I found myself fiercely gardening, limiting my emotional reactions, chastising myself for possible distortions and motivations. People who had known me years ago would barely recognize me now. I had become quiet and withdrawn in social settings, no longer the life of the party after all. How could I know if my boisterous humor or spontaneous or just a borderline desire to be the center of attention? I could no longer trust any of my heartfelt beliefs and opinions on politics, religion, or life. The debate queen had withered. I found myself looking at every single side of an issue, unable to come to any conclusions for fear that they might be tainted. My lifelong ability to be assertive had turned into a constant state of passivity. The queen is controlling, the witch is sadistic, the hermit is fearful, and the wife is helpless, and each requires a different approach. Don't let the queen get the upper hand. Be wary even of accepting gifts because it engenders expectations. Don't internalize the hermit's fears or become limited by them. Don't allow yourself to be alone with the witch. Maintain distance from your own emotional and physical safety. And with the waif, don't get pulled into her crisis and sense of victimization. Pay attention to your own tendencies to want to rescue her, which just feeds the dynamic. Yet I also recognize this. Even if everyone in the world were to accept me and my illness and validate my pain, unless I can abide myself and be compassionate toward my own distress, I will probably always feel alone and neglected by others. 30 seconds of pure awareness is a long time, especially after a lifetime of escaping yourself at all costs. The role of the therapist is to reflect a being accepting self that was never allowed to be in the borderline, to starve off the panic associated with the absence of a primary object. Borderline patients frequently will impulsively engage in behaviors that numb the panic and establish contact with and control over some new object. A borderline suffers a kind of emotional hemophilia. He lacks the clotting mechanism needed to moderate his or her spurts of feeling, stimulate a passion, and the borderline emotionally bleeds to death. You are a warrior in a dark forest with no compass and are unable to tell who the actual enemy is, so you never feel safe. The biographies of the great men see their excesses as signs of their greatness, but Jean Reyer's rise in her biography is read as borderline, Dejona, as borderline, etc. Borderline personality disorder being an overwhelmingly gendered diagnosis. I write, and heroines, the charges of a borderline personality disorder are the same. Charges against girls write in literature. I realize too emotional, too impulsive, no boundaries. What does borderline personality mean anyhow? It appears to be a station between neurosis and psychosis, a fractured but not disassembled psyche. Although, to quote my post, a Melvin psychiatrist, it's what they call people whose lifestyles bother them. Rhythm anthem recognizing how even poison is a form of medicine when used the right way. Susanna Kaysen, they used to a lot. Are you still crazy? Was how people put it, and I would say yes. But I'm older, so I'm more used to it. It's familiar. You've been there. You've done that. And it's gone away. I think the fact that you can feel like it's the end of the world and you're going to kill yourself, and yet there's some part of you that says this has happened before. And by the time you get to the point where you can say this has happened 137 times before, it's better than saying this has happened 4 times before. So as you get older, there's a little ironist or cynic or somebody inside you who says, yeah, Right. Okay, I've heard that. I've heard that. There weren't as many layers between her and the world as there were with the rest of us. Conviction rates in the military are pathetic, with most offenders going free and there is no recourse for appeal. The military believes the emperor has his clothes on, even when they are down around his ankles, and he is coming in the woman's window with a ninth military juries give low sentences or clear offenders altogether. Women can be heard to say, "It's not just me," over and over. Men may get an Article 15, which is just a slap on the wrist and doesn't even follow them in their career. This is hardly a deterrent. The perpetrator frequently stays in place to continue and intimidate their female victims who are then treated like mental cases who need to be discharged. Women find the tables turn, letters in their files trumped up. Women find the tables turn, letters in their files trumped up. Charges, isolation, and transfer are common, as are court-ordered psychiatric referrals that label the woman as lying or incompatible with military service because they are borderline personality disorders or mentally unbalanced. I attend many of these women after they were discharged or were wives of abusers from XXX Air Force Base. When I was a psychotherapist working in the private sector, that was always their diagnosis. Yet retesting intended to show something different after stabilization, like PTSD, span infinity.